Dorothy Okello. I serve as the Dean, School of Engineering, but also the chairperson of Renu. I'm actually the VC's representative from Makere to the Renu board, and then within the Renu board, I was elected to serve as their chair. I first joined the Renu board in 2015. Yeah, I have been very fortunate to see Renu grow, not only in terms of the number of institutions that we serve, but also the number of people that we have as part of the team and how we've grown. When I first joined Renu, we were simply focused on the universities. We then grew to take on research institutions because actually that is our mandate. Then along the way, we realized that we had to start supporting schools at a much earlier stage, and so we opened up for primary and secondary schools. And as we speak right now, I think in terms of raw numbers, the number of secondary schools, for example, that are connected, many more than the universities and research institutions that are on board. So it's been a tremendous journey. Even before I joined the board in 2015, the concept of ICT in education is an area that I had been very passionate about. So I was able to witness Renu coming into being, and then to myself be a part of the governance and its strategic direction going forward from 2015. So I'd have to say that my first role models were my parents. My mom actually was also a scientist herself, and in her day, it was even much harder to be a lady in science, but she was a very successful female scientist and won even a number of awards for her efforts in the space. And since then, there have been so many other very inspiring ladies in the space. Within engineering, when I joined, we were very few women. So everyone who was ahead of you was your role model, because you're like, okay, if I'm a first year and there is a girl or two in second year, I mean, they must have passed their first year to go to a second year. Yes, and at the time that I was here, it was not the semester system where maybe if you fail a class or two, you can keep moving forward and just carry your retakes on and things like that, which I think is a very good flexible system to allow people to progress. If you failed one course in our time while we were at the university, you had to repeat the whole class. Yeah, so that's why I'm saying that if you saw someone in second year, clearly they had passed first year to go to second year. They had passed second year to go to third year, and they had passed fourth year and graduated, and they were now out in the field. Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things about engineering is that you have to solve problems, all right? And to that extent, to a degree, it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. I mean, the problem needs to get solved. Yeah, I think being female and being male may bring different, perspectives into the game. May bring different opportunities and exposures into the game. But at the end of the day, you must solve the problem. You must have quality infrastructure in place. You must ensure that you're really taking into consideration the benefits that your intended users for that, whatever you're building, will take into place. So I think for me that was something that was drummed in very early. It is true that for my class, I was the only girl in my class, but that was not one of the things we were being assessed on. So I had to sit down and get the job done. So even out in the field, while we may be few, the fact of the matter is we must sit down and get the job done. Presently, I serve as a dean in School of Engineering. I followed a gentleman who was our pioneer dean, Professor Umar Bagampade. He did a great job. I have to do a great job. Yeah, so, and I have to serve what I have to do. So I think that is something key. What you need though is networks. Yeah, because you're doing all this multitasking. I'm sure also that men are multitasking different things. Yeah, so you're doing multitasking. They may be, now it's changed a bit, but in the past you are few. You might question whether you are in the right space. Maybe there would be not as much encouragement for you in your immediate circles, with people feeling, maybe you should have done something different. This is for men and things like that. But hopefully that is changing, and people are seeing the opportunities that they have, whether you are female or whether you are male. But you definitely need to have those role models. And like I said, for us coming through, so long as you are a year ahead of me, it means you passed. And if you passed, then I should also do my utmost best to pass. So I have very many people I consider as my role models who may actually not be aware that I look at them in their capacity. But I also have to say that in addition to the female engineers who are ahead of me, Engineer Ruth Chaiwe, Engineer Proskovia Njuchi, Engineer Irene Mulonyi, those were our seniors who were actually even got together and formed an organization looking at women and women in engineering and trying to promote more of that networking. There are so many out there who, I don't know their names, they don't know my names, but I was looking up to them. I also have to say and really give kudos to the male faculty that I had as my lecturers, because they also pushed me to excel. There was nothing like, okay, shortcuts because you are female. That wasn't there really. And even out in the field, sometimes you'd question, can I do this yet? And your boss says, yes, you can. Why not? Get on with it. So I think that has been something I would say has greatly supported me in the career. I've also served as the president of UIPE, which is a Uganda Institution of Professional Engineers. I was the first female to serve as president of there after a long chain of male presidents. UIPE came into being in 1970, so it's it's not a young institution. Yeah, and clearly, if there are few women engineers, few women technicians and technologists, my vote to become the leader of UIPE must have required a lot of male to vote for me, which I don't take for granted. I also had to go and campaign to the males, so I couldn't just vote and say, okay, I'm a woman, let me go and vote for the women. I had to appeal and seek to deliver programs that would support all of us in the engineering sector. Even though alongside that, I also had specific areas, given my own experience in terms of inclusion and diversity, that I wanted to address. And I'm happy that till today, since I was president, that was 2016, 2018, we still have in place a committee of the UIPE Council, which is the Women Engineers, Technologists and Technicians Committee in UIPE Council, whose mandate is to drive more inclusion of women in the engineering sector. Thank you. I think addressing issues of inclusion and diversity are some issues that are really very close to my heart, because it's something I have lived. It's a personal experience that I've had, and I'm very grateful for the opportunities that others have and support that others have rendered to me, both male and female. So maybe some of the more known initiatives in 2000, I was part of a network that initiated the Women of Uganda network that still runs up to today. So this year it will be 23 years old, and basically it was about promoting and supporting the use of information and communication technologies, which is my space. That's my area of expertise, by women and women groups to enhance their productivity. And that came from having been very active in the women's space, the women networking. I was sought after very often because I was the technical person and the internet was new at the time, computers were new. So I was this person I knew this. So I was like, okay, we can actually get together as a network and do that. So that's something that still runs up to today. Within UIPE, I set up of course I had to propose as president, I had to propose to council, and I'm glad they bought into the proposal. So we have up to today the committee on women engineers, technologies, and technicians, WET, that looks at inclusion. Within Makere, and as dean, I'm the patron for the Makere Engineering Society. That's the students body around this. And one of the initiatives that we are looking at is under the MESS umbrella, can we have an initiative that is specifically looking out to the female engineering students? So those are just examples of some of that. I've also been very active in different spaces that look at issues of inclusion of youth, because I'm in this network here, looking at all of those aspects. So that just to share a few. I think when I first came on board as the Renu chair, I was fortunate that I had served a term as a vice chair. So that had put me already in a leadership role to understand what we could take forward in terms of growing Renu. Renu is an organization that has seen tremendous growth in the last few years. And when an organization is growing, especially a membership-based organization like Renu, it's very important that you have the governance structure right, because that's what drives everything. You have to have your governance right, you have to have your strategy right. So one of the things I immediately took on was ensuring that we had strong committees in place. And we had to look at what are the committees that we need to have so that we drive this forward. So some of the new ones, for example, being the education in, the technology in education, the EdTech committee. That's a new committee that we initiated so that we are allowing Renu to grow beyond being what more people know us for, as being an ISP for schools, but really looking at how do we promote education's use of technology for faculty and students. So I would say that's one of the things that I was really keen on. And a board, especially for a growing entity, and I'm really very honored that it was during my time that we had this kind of growth and I've had the chance to experience. I think any board has to, as much as you're in the driver's seats, you're in the governance seats, you also have to be willing to learn, okay? Especially when you are heading an organization like Renu, where we take pride in having very young people in leadership positions. I don't have the average age of the Renu team offhand, but it is certainly in the youth range, meaning it's below 35. Yeah, so you have a really young set of people, so you have to understand that dynamic. You have to understand where you're trying to go. You have to provide space for a lot of creativity to be able to come through. I think in 1 year we really rose up and we had 300 institutions covered. So there's a lot of dynamism that is happening, which also calls for dynamism on the board. Now remember, if the board, in terms of your physical meetings, or any meetings for that matter, you generally, a good practice for a board is you're meeting 3 to 4 times a year, and the committees are preparing, so they'll have many more meetings than the 3 to 4, and they're preparing for that. But alongside trying to do all this, then you have COVID, okay? And I think that would one of those where I would say yes, was a clear challenge that can also be very well recognized by many. That number one, COVID comes in, and a very unfortunate time for the country and globally for all, beyond the country. Um, Everything gets shut down. ICT becomes the lifeline, and Renu is in the business of supporting ICT. So as everything is shutting down, actually Renu has to get more and more relevant because that is our core business. And I'm really very grateful that our network of universities and actually the vice chancellors, because they're really who are the helm of this, were open and willing to work with us so that we can move and enable Renu, allow schools to come back, allow schools to continue doing what we are in the business of doing, teaching and learning, even through this time. It took a lot of flexibility and managing on all sides, and also with the staff. And remember that at the time of COVID, there was also a lot of anxiety, there was also fear, there was a lot of grief. There were so many things we were processing at the same time. So thinking through right down to the person who's doing the work that you need to get done. Yes, we do it all the time, but I think during the times of COVID, we really had to put in even more in terms of who are the people we have on board and how are they coping, because we were all affected in one way or another. It was either within your house, within your extended family, within your place of work that you were touched by the effects of COVID, and we had to do something about it. Wow. My highlights with Renu are many. Because if you think about it, I was involved in Renu even when it was an idea, to the point that now Renu has 2 branches. It has grown. It has 2 branches. So just imagine that whole range that, of course, it probably also speaks to my age, but we will not discuss that part. But from an idea to 2 branches, there's so much that has happened in between that space. There's so many moments just getting on board. I remember the discussions we had around, for example, secondary schools becoming part of this. There's another discussion in terms of how, now that we have got multiple stakeholders within this, how do we enable equitable voice within Renu? How do we allow Renu to walk the talk? Because Renu is providing a platform to facilitate research, to facilitate teaching and learning, to facilitate innovation. But how about Renu itself also providing and making research grants available, in addition to the internships which they're already doing, which is a really good thing as well. And so the first research grants that we offered out, that for me is also another really cool milestone. The several happy moments that we celebrated together as staff and the team, and as I've told you, the average age of the Renu team is youth. So it's that has also been a really great moment. So there's so many milestones along the way. I think for me also, setting up different committees to help us really understand how, as Renu, we can be more of a service to the network. That's also another really good moment for me. I think those are some that I can think offhand. One thing I can say is over the years, Renu has come up with really multiple services that our members can take advantage of. Of course, when it began, it was really more like an ISP, but Renu has gone to way beyond that in terms, even as I mentioned earlier, offering research grants. But in terms of the services, there's looking at cybersecurity, there's capacity building over schools or institutions. Let me put it more generally, the technical team of that. There's Turnitin to check on plagiarism. So there are so many different services that Renu has, and I think going forward, and maybe engineers, we like technology, and once the technology is there, there's a way we feel we've achieved. But I think going forward, we now need to put more effort as Renu in terms of helping our network members appreciate all the different services that are available and how they can use this to their advantage. Because I would say, to be very honest, I think even what we would call the bigger institutions, we're probably tapping into 30% of the capacity that Renu currently makes available to the institutions. There's also, with COVID, there was a big boost, and I have to appreciate that, because it meant that we had to transition a lot of things online. So a number of services did get some pickup because of that, but we should not wait for sad things to happen to drive us in that way. And I would really look at Renu having a more proactive approach, more than it has already been doing, because the comms team really has done its part as well. But we need to do a bit more to drive up utilization of Renu services from the current about 30% to much higher levels, certainly. In my view, Renu is like a platform. Okay, Renu is like a platform that is offering a variety of services that can enhance the teaching and learning environment. Okay, it's now mainstream that technology in education is the way to go, and different institutions, be they secondary schools, be they tertiary institutions, all right, they are all having different programs to increase the technology that is used there. So I would like to see Renu becoming more of a partner, right, with the different institutions and walking the journey together to how we enhance this. And this is also going to entail working with some of the key stakeholders in the education space. For example, the ministry. How do we now work more closely with the Ministry of Education and Sports to appreciate what role can we have together with the ministry in terms of mainstreaming technology in education, right? We have the vocational programs. We have the new curriculum that's being rolled out in secondary schools. What more should we be doing as Renu, which is this network of educational institutions, but which through its own capacity builds and through its network? Because what I haven't mentioned is that Renu is one of the national research and education networks that are spread all over Africa, Europe, and all. So as an NREN, Renu being the NREN, the National Research and Education Network of Uganda, we have networks with other NRENs. So we have the opportunity to bring in good practices and lessons learned that can enhance this. Okay? We talk a lot about Uganda being, which is a fact, we are largely agriculture based. We want to move into agribusiness. Okay? What more can we be doing via the Renu platform to further that agenda? We talk about innovation. We talk about Industry 4.0. All of these are ICT based. What further roles can Renu play in supporting the research and education networks, all right, to be more active players in these spaces, okay? Because what we really want is that let's tap into the fact that we are a youthful population, which means that if you look at the people touched by Renu, these are the majority of the Ugandans. Okay, so what more can Renu do in collaboration with the other stakeholders so that we use technology to drive further our national development?
last question. As your term of office as chairperson is coming to an end, can you give us a message for the Renu community?
Yeah, thank you. As my term comes to an end, it's really been, I'm humbled by the opportunity that I have had. And first, I have to give thanks to the Almighty God who has enabled me such a privilege, to be a part of Renu. Like I said, from idea to 2 branches as I exit. I want to thank also the Vice Chancellors. I started with Professor Dumba, who's actually who nominated me to represent the Vice Chancellor on the board, because essentially that's who forms the members, the Vice Chancellors, Deputy Vice Chancellors. So you can see the honor and privilege I had to represent the Vice Chancellor of Makerere on the board, and then later on the board voting me into chairperson. So Renu is a great space. Renu has a lot of potential in terms of what we can do, not only, by the way, for our youth in the education and research systems, but even our youth in the informal sector through partnerships. So I'd like to see going forward, number one, let's increase the utilization of the services that Renu already has on offer. Our utilization is around 30% right now. We need to step that up. And I think with the coming in of a new team, looking at new ideas, that is something that I believe will really go forward. But it will need to be done in partnership. So that is number one. Number two is looking at issues of inclusion and diversity. We already have it, and it's growing, because if you just think about the kind of institutions who are now members of Renu, we have the universities, we have technical colleges, we have research institutions, we have secondary schools, and the list is growing. So I think it is going to be very important to see how Renu grows with such diversity, but with everyone's voice being heard. I think those will be issues going forward that Renu has to address. And third but not least, I would like to see Renu really mainstream issues of national development. Okay, because we started from looking at problems. I think we are now a solution provider. When we look at Vision 2040, what is Renu's role in achieving vision, in driving towards Vision 2040? What is Renu's role in driving and contributing towards the National Development Plan? I think we need to be very clear on those issues going forward.